I hope people understand that if you truly, truly love yourself, it's an actual superpower, because most of us go around in the world thinking we're not enough. So then we seek desperately the validation of others. I need my partner to tell me I'm great. I need my boss to tell me I'm great. I need my mom and dad to tell me I'm great. I need my friends to tell me I'm great. I have to have this perfect Instagram and look how amazing my life is so people tell me I'm great. And what happens when you truly, truly love yourself, and it takes a lot of work, it can take years, but once you really learn to love yourself, you no longer need the validation. It's not, I mean, don't get me wrong, external validation feels great, you know, I'm not saying don't, but you don't need it anymore. You don't need it to fill a wound. You filled it yourself. And when you fill your self-love wound yourself, it gives you permission to show up in the world as your truest, most authentic self. And you can do what you want to do because you want to create, you want to connect, you want to have fun, you want to explore. And it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks of us, because so many of us are holding back in our lives based upon what others might think of us if we were to go for it, right?
Yeah. Welcome my guest, Doug Cartwright. Doug is the CEO and founder of The Daily Shifts, an online company dedicated to inspiring lasting transformations of the mind, body, and soul, and the author of the forthcoming book, Holy Shit, We're Alive. As I'm sure you could tell from the title, Holy Shit, We're Alive, it's not another boring, enlightening self-help book. Instead, Doug shares his unusual journey from self-made millionaire at age 24, devoted Mormon, family man, and how he had to lose it all to go down a rabbit hole of self-discovery, world travel, heartbreak, meditation, and much more to find his true purpose and happiness. Doug's newest book, Holy Shit, We're Alive, in hopes of inspiring others to share tactical steps that readers can take to cut through the noise and lead happier lives as a result. Okay, Doug, welcome to the podcast, Passion, Love, Pursuit. I am so happy to have you on. As we were talking about before this, I was digging into your book, which is going to be available once this episode comes out. And I was really, really intrigued by it. I was seriously wanting to read the whole thing. It's really, not only does it share your journey, but there's a lot of lessons in there, of course, a lot of takeaways. And I can't wait to get the book in hand and highlight the crap out of it, because I know there's lots of goodness in the book. So anyways, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm also excited to get my hands on a physical copy. So yeah.
I know it's like, it seems like it takes so long to actually get the copy yourself, even though you've been carrying it around with you for probably, I don't know, how long have you been working on this book?
I always tell people I've been working on it for 32 years, right? That's how old I am. But yeah, it's been a total journey, but the actual process of getting idea onto manuscript, onto book, it's been, 13, 14 months now. So it's a really exciting time to finally get this launched.
That's amazing. And your book is called We're Alive. Wait, what is it called?
It's Holy Shit, We're Alive.
Yeah, I forgot the big point of it. Holy shit, we're actually alive. Well, okay, so before we get into your book that is releasing soon, let's talk about you a little bit. Can you unpack with us pretty much your journey, let's say before you led into personal development? So before we go deep into that, I would love to kind of hear a little bit about your story beforehand.
Yeah. So I grew up, I'm here in Salt Lake City, Utah, currently right now. I've lived all over the country, but kind of back here for COVID. But I grew up in a very upper middle class, white, conservative Mormon family. So we had a nice house. My dad did well off, and I was raised in a pretty strict religion. Obviously, when you're growing up in a strict religion like Mormonism, you don't know that it's strict until you get older and kind of peek out over the fence, and you're like, whoa, that's actually not common to be this intense. But yeah, so I grew up in a very conservative neighborhood and very sheltered, I guess you could say. Like where I lived in the east side of Utah, everyone is white and conservative and Christian. And so you kind of just, that's your worldview. Like that's just how the world is. And so I was pretty naive to a lot of other perceptions and whatnot, and had kind of this pressure from religion to be a certain way, to be perfect, and to on the outside look like you have everything together, and you are have the from the Mormonism, there's a high pressure to like we have what's called service missions. I don't know if you've seen like the Book of Mormon musical.
Mm.
But yeah, it's hilarious. Anyways, but the Book of Mormon is kind of this cornerstone of the religion, but there's like this pressure when you're 19 years old to go on a mission, and you get like instructions from the church office buildings, and you get called to serve a 2-year service mission somewhere random in the world. They say it's kind of inspired by God. And so there's this pressure as you grow up in the Mormon church to go on this mission, and kind of your reward for obeying the laws and going on your mission is that you will find a young lady when you get home who'll want to marry you, and then you start your family, and then you live happily ever after in the highest kingdom of God. So up until that point, as I'm growing up, there's kind of this weight and this pressure to be ready to go on my mission and be prepared and whatnot. But in regards to that, is the church actually has requirements before you leave, and they set a standard of worthiness. And what I mean by that is they have expectations of the lifestyle you're supposed to live before you go. So it's no sex, no girls, live a very strong, worthy, moral life, so you can be worthy to go on your mission. So anyways, before I go, I had a girlfriend, and there's this big thing. It's like, I'm not going to see you for 2 years. It's going to be so sad, because when you're on your mission, it's very strict. It's like there's no TV, there's no music. You can't call your girlfriend. You don't have cell phones. You email your family once a week for 30 minutes. But other than that, it's like you are on a very rigid schedule. So, 2 days before I left, we got intimate and got physical, and I broke the rules.
Oh no!
Right. But there's so much pressure to go on your mission from your community, and so I swept it under the rug. I lied about it, and still went out to go on my mission because I would have this standard I was supposed to live up to. And then, 9 months into my mission, the guilt and the shame of lying about it caught up to me. And so I confessed on my mission 9 months in, and I was sent home. They kicked me off. I did get called to Auckland, New Zealand, which was amazing. Got to go to New Zealand. So that was awesome. But they sent me off the island. And that was kind of the first time in my life where I felt the shame that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't really fit into my community, and that something was wrong with me. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that story. I mean, I don't know a lot about the religion, but I imagine a lot of how you were brought up has formed certain beliefs in your life. And I'm curious. So obviously we're going to go really deep into your personal development journey, but after that, what did life look like for you? How did you transition? Like, did you stay a Mormon, or did you start branching out and exploring different religions, or?
I didn't really branch out and explore different religions, but it was kind of, like I said, it was this first time where, because when I grew up, I was, I feel like I was popular in high school, and I had a lot of friends, and I was student body vice president, and I was captain of the football team, and I wore my Letterman's jacket to school every Friday, and was kind of like the guy, and this was like a turning point, because all of a sudden I wasn't the guy anymore. Like I'd screwed up. And so there was this subconscious shame that like I didn't really belong in my community anymore. So I had to find other ways to, in a sense, find my identity. And so it kind of caused me to rebel, and not really intensely, but then it's like, okay, like, well, now that I'm home from my mission, I've never drank before, so let's start drinking, and like let's smoke weed, and let's explore all this. And it was more of a like, I'm embodying that role now because I don't belong, and so I need to find my community,
your new identity.
And so I didn't really have a relationship to God, to answer your question. At that point, it was kind of just like whatever. I still kind of went to church, but like they always talk about like, oh, you can feel, quote unquote, the spirit, like God will guide you, and didn't feel like I had a relationship with God at all at that time, and I didn't really understand that. So I was kind of in like the middle ground, kind of just went for show.
Yeah. Okay. So I know you actually created a quite successful career, but you ended up completely pivoting out of it to start something completely new. If you could touch a little bit about your career previously, and what beliefs and what was life like in that career, and why did you learn it was so harmful actually to you? What did you learn from it?
Yeah. So around that same time, I'm kind of seeking my identity. I'm seeking validation. I'm kind of trying to find my tribe because church isn't it. And when I was 20, I think I was 20 at the time, I got recruited to work for a sales company that sold home security systems door to door. And that sounds really weird and really intense, but the commissions and the margins on the sales are uncapped.
Mm.
And there's a potential to make a ton of money as a young 20-year-old into college. And so I remember thinking, understanding this principle of, why would I get paid, $8 an hour for my time when I could actually go knock doors and be in charge and get paid on what I can produce. And so I kind of understood that concept when I was in my early 20s. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go try this sales thing out, this door-to-door sales thing out. And I took it very serious. And that was the first time I got introduced into personal development. I had a mentor, his name's Casey, and I talk about him in my book, but he introduced me into personal development and goal setting and healthy habits. And it was like this alarm went off in my body. And it was like, I was so excited and I felt so much energy about, personal development and sales. And so I kind of went all in and found my new identity as a sales rep. And I got really, really, really good. And, when I was 20 years old, that happened to be the year my dad died. So I only worked for that, that company for like 7 weeks doing sales, and I had to come home to deal with the loss of my father. But I made $50,000 in 7 weeks as a 20-year-old. And I was like, okay, there's something here. And so when I was 21, I doubled down and I recruited a team and took a leadership role and really focused on how to become a better salesman. And then when I was 21, I made close to $300,000 that next summer. And so I was like, okay, there's something going on here. And then eventually I continued to build this foundation. I cleared over $1 million by the time I was 24. But really what was happening was I made all this money and I was spending it so quickly, because what I really was doing is I was screaming for validation, because I kind of got kicked out of my church. I grew up as the fat kid. So in high school, I weighed 300 pounds. Wow. And because I was so big, I felt like I was unlovable, right? Something's wrong with me. I don't deserve love. And so all of a sudden I kind of become this rock star. Literally at my company, they called me the king. My nickname was the king.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I'm like kind of like this celebrity at work. And so I totally wrapped my identity into it. And so as soon as I start making money, I start buying the cars and flying first class and going to all the sporting events and going to the club. And basically, I'm just trying to show people that I'm worthy of love. And it created this really deep spiral of like never having enough and like really, really seeking validation. And I coined the term in the book is the success void, where on paper, externally, I looked successful. I had, was driving $110,000 Mercedes and I was flying first class and going to the Super Bowl with Kevin Durant. But like inside, I was absolutely freaking miserable.
So what was the changing moment that pivoted your whole life? How did you transition? Like, was there a breaking moment where you realized, like, I'm not happy, this is not fulfillment? I might have all these money and these things that show externally, but what was the pivotal point that transitioned your life?
Yeah, it was when it was 27. And I was kind of in this middle ground where I kind of realized work wasn't it, because I had a lot of mentors, and their advice to me was like, hey, go make more money. And I was kind of like, like maybe. And I didn't have a relationship to God. And I was really in this deep, and I just had my heart broken. My first time my heart broken, I was in a relationship with this girl, and I bought her an engagement ring and called it off. And so I was in this really muddy space. And on June 10th, 2017, I go into way more detail in the book, but on June 10th, 2017, my entire life changed overnight. And it was the first time I experimented with psychedelic drugs. And I had a psychedelic experience that absolutely blew my perceptions of reality into confetti.
Wow. Okay. I know you go really deep in your book about this. And for somebody that has never tried psychedelics or even has a clue about it, why was this such a pivotal experience for you? And how did that blow your mind open to then go deeper?
Yeah. So growing up, conservative white Mormon, in Utah, we're taught that all drugs are bad, and if you do anything one time, you'll become addicted and then become homeless and then you'll die. Like, that's kind of the narrative, right?
Yeah.
Of quote unquote drugs. And I remember I read a book, I think it's on my bookshelf. I have it there, yeah. But it's called a book called Stealing Fire by
I have it.
Jamie Wheal and Stephen Kotler. And I remember kind of just thumbing through that book, and they get to a point of the book where they talk about psychedelics. So the book is about how to get into flow state, how to perform better. So as as a sales rep, I'm like, okay, how can I enhance my performance, right? And so I picked up that book, and then they get to the book that talk about psychedelics. And at this point in my life, it was like, those are the worst things you could ever possibly do. Don't ever do them. And they talk about MDMA, psilocybin, which is mushrooms, LSD, and DMT, which is found in ayahuasca. And they're talking about the incredible therapeutic benefits, and how Steve Jobs says doing LSD was one of the most profound experiences of his life. And there's a quote from Tim Ferriss that says, "Every self-made billionaire I know actively participates in hallucinogenic experiences." And I'm reading this and I'm like, what?
Mhm.
Like, no way. Like, this is crazy talk to me. And so I remember once again feeling like this energetic wave go through me, and just feeling so called to the work with this. And coincidentally, I'm at a party, couple weeks, 2 weeks later, maybe. I've never been offered hard drugs in my life other than marijuana. I'm at a party and someone's like, "Hey, I've got MDMA here if you want to try it." And I'm like, no way, like, this is it. I remember feeling like I have to try this.
Hmm.
And so I took MDMA at this party, and like I said, I share all the crazy details in the book, but eventually what ended up happening was, and this is I had a very uncommon experience with MDMA. I basically had this out of body interdimensional experience where I connected with the creator of creation and felt the love of God for the first time. And my entire constructs of reality got blown out. And it was such a profound experience for me, where it literally shifted the direction of my life, where it's like, okay, I need to go explore more down here. And I always say that it's what sparked me onto the path of woo woo, is what I say.
Yeah. And you talk about all the different things you tried. So can you kind of touch on that, of what then began, like, what was your journey from there? What did you dip your toes into? And what was one of the most transformative
Yeah.
things in personal development for you, or working on yourself in the woo-woo space, if you want to call it?
Before that experience, if you were to talk to me and you were to ask me, okay, Doug, what's your trauma? What traumatic experience happened in your life? I'd be like, I didn't have any trauma. Like, I had a beautiful childhood, like, never had any intense experiences. My life was good. Because you hear about like horrific stories of people dealing with, sexual abuse, physical abuse. It's about crazy stories. And so we judge our experiences on these really intense experiences that we hear about. And then we almost decredit our experiences because they're not as extreme.
Right.
So because I never had a really, really intense extreme, or that I was conscious of at the time, I always didn't really feel like, oh, I don't need to see a therapist. Like, I don't have trauma. Like, that's weird. I don't need that. And that experience really led me down into being curious about other compounds. And so that led me to do psilocybin mushrooms. And so I was like, I want to continue to explore the psychedelic space. And once I started exploring, with psilocybin and especially ayahuasca, which is, really, really intense, I realized, I was like, oh shit, I have a lot of trauma.
That's so crazy. It's so interesting that you mentioned that. Is like, I think there's the big T and the small T, right? But like you said, everyone has some form of trauma. I think just being human, we're exposed to traumatic experiences. And again, it doesn't need to be this like, oh, I watched somebody completely murdered in front of me. Like, it doesn't have to be so big to affect us. There's things that happen in our childhood, especially our childhood, that seep into our subconscious mind, and it stays with us, and we operate from that, and anything could per se trigger it.
Yeah.
So if you could share a little bit about what you uncovered. So, well, first of all, I haven't done any of psychedelics or even ayahuasca. I am kind of curious.
Yeah.
I'm definitely intrigued by it, and especially because I love working on myself, and I'm all about becoming my best self. That I feel I know a lot of people that have done it, and of course there's positive and negative experiences. So
Totally.
of course when we're sharing this, it's to each is their own. Your own experience will be unique. You know, and also when people they say you need to be called to ayahuasca.
Yeah.
If you could speak on that for anybody for anybody that doesn't know anything about ayahuasca, if you could share a little bit about that, because I actually haven't talked about this on my podcast yet. If you could share a little bit about what it is, and then also what it's good for and what it's not
Yeah.
good for.
Totally. So ayahuasca is, and by the way, I am not professional. I have no medical degrees. Like I'm not an expert in this field by any means. And so excuse me if I get something wrong, but like I said, I'm no expert in this at all. But um, ayahuasca is a tea, and it's derived from the plant of an ayahuasca plant. And then there's this tree root called, I think it's called the chacruna, or there's another word for it, and I can't remember it. But basically, in this ayahuasca plant, this leaf, there's immense amounts of DMT, which is dimethyltryptamine. And that's actually in most plants, like your plant behind your left shoulder, like there's a lot of DMT in that plant. But basically, if we were just to eat that plant by itself, our stomach acid would break down the DMT. But somehow they figured out, I don't know how they figured it out, in the ancient jungles of the Amazon, those ancient communities realized that if they boil the ayahuasca plant with the tree root of the specific tree, it actually coats the DMT molecularly. And so when you ingest it, it allows to get into your bloodstream and up into your brain. Sounds crazy, but it's a little tea. You take a little shot glass of this tea, of this ayahuasca, and I don't know how to explain it, but it's the most profound, indescribable experience you can have as a human being. And it's really important, set and setting, where are you, what's the setting? And especially with ayahuasca, it's really important that you work with a trained facilitator, because it gets really, really intense, and it takes you on this incredible journey. I mean, the best way to describe it is almost someone comes and takes your soul out of your body and takes you kind of through the veil, and you get really unique perspectives on parts of your life that normally you wouldn't address. And so a prime example for me was, I think it was the fourth time I'd ever done ayahuasca. I drink, and it hits me really hard, really quick. I'm a lightweight. I don't need very much, and I'm like blown out. And so I took a normal dose, which is a heavy dose for most people. And I remember these old memories of when I was a kid coming up. And it actually was, I was reliving a time when I was sexually abused when I was 6 years old. And it was by my best friend at the time, who was 8. So it wasn't like this malicious attack. It was just this kid who was curious. And he did it a couple times where he would sexually abuse me. And I remember I started thinking of those memories. And as I was in the ceremony, I'm like, oh, why am I thinking about this? I haven't thought about this in 30 years. I pushed it so far down. And then I'm like, oh, wait, this is what ayahuasca does. I'm like, there's probably something here for me. And so I leaned into the experience. And what it unraveled to me, I relived these really intense sexual experiences, like I was back in the exact experience. And what's crazy about it was it showed me how when he was 16 and I was 14, he actually got into a car accident and died.
Wow.
This friend of mine. And I remember when I heard that he had died, my initial feeling was relief, because it was like, wow, like now no one will ever know my secret. Like it's literally going to the grave. And so in this ayahuasca experience, I remember asking, like, how has this affected me? Like, what are the true effects of this experience when I was 6 years old in my friend's basement? And it uncovered and unraveled to me that growing up, I always easily made friends with women, non-romantic, just platonic relationships. I had a lot of girl space friends. And, sometimes my guy friends would make comments about it, like, Doug, you have so many girlfriends, like, what's up with that? And intuitively, I'm kind of like, well, I have a twin sister, so maybe I just am used to having feminine energy around me my whole life, like maybe. But in this ayahuasca experience, it showed to me that actually subconsciously I've created a story that men aren't safe.
Mm.
Like my very first best friend abused me. So when I meet new friends as I have gotten older, into my 20s, right? Teens, 20s, junior high, high school, college, I have a very big wall up when I meet new guys because in my mind I've created a story that men aren't safe. And even looking back, it was so fascinating at that when I would meet a new guy at a party or whatnot at a function, I would always make a comment about how I was dating someone or a girl I was interested in. And what I'm subconsciously telling them is like, hey, I'm not gay, so don't try and come on to me.
Right, right.
And it was like the most mind blowing changing, like, oh my gosh, like this has affected me so deeply. And it's something I had shoved way, way down. And it was like ayahuasca was teaching me like, now you can actually go out and make guy friends, and that's normal, and that's okay, and it's like not weird to have guy friends. You should, and that's healthy. And since that moment, I've like had this new perception, and now I've made way more guy friends than I normally would because I realized I was holding on to this story and this trauma that was affecting my life for 20 plus years.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that so vulnerably. I really appreciate it. But that's what's interesting that I've heard with ayahuasca. It reveals your shadows. It
Yeah,
reveals the unconscious part of your mind that you don't even know exists, and
yeah,
also lets you see your ego with
totally.
like as raw as it is. And
Yeah,
that's what's so fascinating. But the thing about ayahuasca, it doesn't heal you.
no,
It just reveals something to you. The now leaving ayahuasca is where either I don't know how many people take a ayahuasca experience and are able to see the lessons in it. Like, I don't know how many people are aware that they're there to be taught something,
yeah,
or I mean, I don't know unless you're told that beforehand, but let's say you learn all these things, but if you don't put action into it afterwards to take that lesson and then unlearn what you've learned from it, if
totally.
you want to say, then it didn't serve you, and then maybe you need to do more personal development work. But what did you then do from that? It sounds like obviously you made more guy friendships, but I imagine you had to go a lot more deeper into personal development from there. So what were some of the things that you started to do yourself?
Yeah, and one thing that I really wasn't aware of until recently, I was just at a conference 2 weeks ago, and a business conference. We went pretty personal, and one thing that I realized was like I actually did a very good job at integrating my experiences.
Wow.
And really looking back at my book, I'm like, oh my gosh, what my book is, it's an integration book. It's like
Mm,
my life. This was my life before. I wasn't happy. I worked with plant medicines, and this is how I changed my life. And to kind of rewind just a little bit on that, you make a very good point that these medicines and compounds, they don't fix it for you, right? They show you what you need to do. And so I always say with caution to go into these spaces. And until you really, really feel called to go do this work, I would avoid it because it's possible it could trigger really deep changes you want to express in your life or really re-trigger really deep traumatic experiences. So unless you're in a space where you have the capacity, you might want to change your job after, or change your partner, or move, or change your political beliefs, or change your religious beliefs. I'm not saying that's going to happen for everyone, but it's possible that you might have these strong desires. And so if you're not in a space where you have the capacity and the support to go through major life changing decisions, it can actually cause more damage than good because you create a new internal battle within your head, right?
true.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's really, I always say proceed with caution,
Mm,
because it can be damaging in some cases. Um, but to go back into your question, what changes I made, it was deeper. So I really dealt with a lot of my fat kid stuff. Like I created a story when I was, in elementary school that I was a fat kid. And because I'm the fat kid, something is wrong with me. And because something's wrong with me, I don't deserve love, especially from women, because women don't want the fat kid. So I now had to overcompensate in other areas of my life to show you why I'm worthy. So I have to be nice. I have to be funny. I have to make a lot of money and spend it on you. And
mhm.
so I was overcompensating my whole life. And I learned really at the core of all of my medicine work is like I was really truly learning to love myself and that I have special, unique gifts and that I'm worthy of love, regardless if I have a best-selling book or regardless of how much I weigh or regardless if I have a six pack or regardless of anything. I just deserve love no matter what. And so learning these ideas and getting these insights and then implementing them, integrating them into my life. So bringing in mindfulness practice. So the biggest change really on a day-to-day basis of this work is integrating mindfulness practices into my daily life, such as yoga, meditation, eating healthy, getting enough sleep, staying hydrated. And that's been the biggest effect for sure.
And then you birth a new baby
Yeah.
after that, which was
Yeah.
the Daily Shifts app, which is really
Yeah.
remarkable. So I would love to know, where did that idea come from? And then why an app?
Yeah. So the Daily Shifts is a personal development and goal setting app based in mindfulness, right? So it's kind of like it's your daily shifts to get you back to center, because our days are crazy, right? We have work and family and deadlines, and there's so much noise going on. I mean, the world is just absolutely crazy right now if you turn on the news. And so we get lost in this noise so often. So I wanted to create a tool that people could use where you can have check-ins every day, shifts, to kind of bring you back to center. So it's very simple. So there's breath work, there's meditation, there's goal setting, there's gratitude, and checking in on your goals as well to kind of keep you on the right direction. And so I initially was going to create the daily shifts as a physical workbook. And then I had a dream one night that I needed to build an app. And so I'm like, oh, I'm going to turn this into an app. And now it's actually turned into a whole media company. We have a blog and a newsletter and a course and a workbook in the app. And, I work with people one-on-one now, and now there's a book. And so it's kind of turned into this incredible thing.
And I know your app is quite successful. How many downloads have you had? I know you can find on Apple.
Yeah. So it's on the Apple App Store. We're pushing 30,000 users, and we really haven't done any advertising. And so it's just word of mouth. People are loving it, and people are loving the, daily shift to get back and centered. And so it's been a fun ride.
I love the concept of it, because I think so many of us, it's so easy to get off track.
Yeah.
And of course, the only way we could implement a habit into our life is if we do it daily.
Yeah.
And we just keep at it. So I love that it's like a reminder, like, do this daily, this little thing, this little shift.
Yeah,
So
every time you log into the app, it takes less than 2 minutes to complete the activities. It's just a little simple thing just to kind of recenter. You're 100% right.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about a little, just pushing aside the plant medicines and whatnot. What are some self-development books you've read that impacted you a lot? I know you said Stealing Fire, but that was to introduce you to psychedelics. But what else has been a book that you're like, whoa, this was definitely a book I would say get on your bookshelf, or get on your bookshelf, but read it.
Yeah, I have a lot of book suggestions for sure. So when I was starting in at Vivint, and I was really focusing on like outward performance, right? Like The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy was a book that really resonated with me. And that was all about, simple habits done correctly over a long period of time equal extraordinary results.
Mm-hmm.
And so for anyone that's looking for more of a personal development in regards to work performance or physical performance, I highly recommend Darren Hardy's Compound Effect. It's a really easy read. You can read it. You can literally read it in like 1 or 2 sittings. And it's just very brilliant ideas explained very simply. And so that's always one I usually go through once a year, just a reminder. After that, as far as interpersonal, like deep spiritual, the book that's resonated with me the most is The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer.
Yeah.
Anything Michael Singer. Yeah, that book is insane. If you really want to go really deep, Michael Singer has a course on Audible called Living from a Place of Surrender. It's an 8-part audio course. It's lecture series type. That is the most profound, in my opinion, the most profound, deep, true spiritual text ever created. It's not woo-woo, it's not weird, it's not hippie at all. It's just, how do we quiet the voice inside of our head, and why do we have neurotic thoughts? And let me explain to you how it all works. And it's beautiful. And it doesn't matter if you're Christian or hippie or atheist, anything he says in that will resonate with you. And so I've actually listened to it maybe 30 times in the last year. Wow. I'm trying to memorize the course because I think it's so profound. But I think that is for sure the most influential course I've ever gotten my hands on.
Amazing. Well, so I know you talk a lot about alignment. I've heard you drop that word quite a bit, and I'm big on alignment because I believe like anything we want in life, we have to align with it.
Yeah.
So, and that takes, it has to come internally from us.
Mm.
So, how do you find we could best align ourselves, and what does that look like to you?
It's a good question. I think alignment would be when our thoughts, feelings, and actions are in harmony,
Yeah,
right? That's when we
beautiful.
know we're aligned. And for me, there are days where I still to this day feel completely misaligned. And I think true alignment is being okay with that, right? I'm okay that I'm off. I'm okay that I'm frustrated. Like sometimes I have people say, "Oh, Doug, you're like this new spiritual, calm, wise guru," and I'm like, "You think I'm wise and calm? Go watch me at the golf course." Like, I get really pissed off sometimes, and so I think it's okay being okay with our feelings
Yeah.
and knowing that when we're happy, it's not going to last forever, and when we're sad, that's also not going to last forever, and just surrendering and allowing these emotions to come and go. And so, you ask what are things that I do to stay in alignment. For sure, I am the most aligned when I'm eating healthy and getting enough sleep and staying
Mm.
hydrated, right? If I can knock out those three things, if I'm eat healthy, get enough sleep, and I stay hydrated, everything else kind of seems to fall in place for me. What about
Yeah.
you? What do you do to stay in alignment?
That's a good question. Or I thank you
Yeah.
for asking, but
Yeah.
I love that you say, because you were talking about uh, Michael Singer's
Yeah.
book, and he talks about surrendering. And that's exactly like this whole alignment is also not, we're human, right? We're not
Right.
going to be, I saw somebody share on their Instagram the other day what a spiritual journey looks like. And then it's a reel, and it shows like at the first clips, it's like somebody meditating, somebody doing breath work, this, that, and the other. And they're like, what it really looks like is like slamming down at the pillow and screaming out loud. And it's like, we are not, we're not meant to do everything perfect. Things aren't going to be smooth sailing in our life. It's going to have ups and downs and turns and all the twists and everything. And it's surrendering to what that is, and also accepting what it is, not judging it that something's wrong with you or that something's broken with you. It's just surrendering and letting be, and then just realigning, doing things like you mentioned what you do. And I can't agree with you more. And I have to say, I work out pretty much every morning, let's say 6 days a week. I didn't work out this morning. And I know 110% of the time when I don't work out in the morning, I'm off.
Yeah.
I just am. It is one of the things I do. I also have just my morning routine that really just keeps me aligned. And it's little things. I could not do every single thing every morning, but I choose to be give myself a little grace and be like, it's okay. You slept in because you were tired. It's okay. Next day will be different, and just give ourselves grace. And
And it's just learning to love this version of you, right? You're never getting this
yes,
version back, right? I'm never going to be 32-year-old Doug again. You're never going to be, your life's going to change dramatically. My life's going to change dramatically. And we'll look back at these moments and be like, oh, that was a fun time of my life. But sometimes you don't feel that way when you're in it because you're trying to improve the quality of your life. And I call it happy when syndrome. So if not, we're waiting. Life will be happy when, right?
right.
When I
Absolutely.
get when I get married, when I get in shape, when I launch my book, then life will be good. But like this is it. Like these are the moments right now. And so learning to really, like you said, give yourself grace for where you are and learning to love this version of you, I think is really important.
Yeah. And then the importance of gratitude, how much that could really shift our days. And if you could touch on that and how we could deepen our gratitude. I obviously everybody's heard like write down 3 things you're grateful for in the morning and then 3 things before you go to sleep. We know that, but how could we deepen our gratitude
So
practice?
this is a technique, or whatever you want to call it, that I do if I'm feeling really frustrated, and it works no matter what. We'll do it together. It takes 30 seconds. So anyone listening, unless you're driving, don't do this. Close your eyes and just think of someone that has made a big impact on you, that you love dearly, that's played a major role in your life, that is really special to you. And then just wish for them to be happy. Send them a little vibe, send them a little prayer, whatever you want to call it, and just wish for that person to be happy. And take a big breath in and out. That's it. Took 30 seconds, right?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it is just visualizing something to be grateful for. And it's the little things. I love to think about the little things because the little things are really what we can see every day in our life. Like I love going for a walk without my cell phone.
Mm,
It's the best thing ever because you actually see so much to appreciate. Like
yeah.
during springtime, it's like, oh goodness, like the spring bloom is so gorgeous. So the little things, I think that's key,
Yeah.
is just
I,
being able to notice. Even we have, luckily, I mean, granted, maybe somebody listening to this right now doesn't have legs, but they have arms
yeah.
and they're able to do so many things with their arm. You know, it's just the little things really
Totally.
that add up.
Yeah. And I absolutely on that point, I love, like, I am a huge fan of the going on a walk without your cell phone. And I actually need to get back in the routine. I've slipped off, but I'm not going to beat myself up over it. But I used to wake up like 5:30 in the morning. And before I would even check my phone, I'd immediately get out of bed and I'd go on like a 30-minute walk and watch the sunrise before I checked my phone at all. And it made significant changes in my day.
Mm.
And so the whole walk without the cell phone thing, if you're looking for a way, if you're feeling really anxious and overwhelmed, I think you nailed it. Like walking without your cell phone is a huge way to get back in alignment.
Yeah, and then another thing for people that have a hard time meditating,
Mm,
doing a walk without your cell phone, I think is it could be a form of meditation because you're
yeah,
able to actually let your thoughts just flow
yeah,
and then, not I mean, hopefully not judging the thoughts that come in, but you're able to then hear your own voice because if you're I tend to when I'm walking listen to something to like learn while I'm walking or study next guest or whatever it may be, but honestly, I think the more I don't do that, the more it's serving me because I'm able to actually tap into things that I normally won't tap into if I'm not meditating per se.
yeah. I think that's a great analogy because I think you nailed it. Like our brains are so noisy. There's so much noise in our life. And the thing that's interesting about noise is that it's not all bad, right? And so like it's like for me, my noise is I'm loving the NBA playoffs right now. I've been watching the finals. So I've got the finals on. I've got Instagram. I know I've got a podcast. I know I want to go golf. And so I know so I've got all these things going. And so if I can step out with no technology, eventually over time the noise just kind of quiets down.
Mhm.
And then like you said, you can tap into your intuition. So I love the analogy that like your intuition is like a think of like an old radio and you had to like turn the knob to make sure you're exactly on the right station. If you weren't, there's a little bit of static. So you go a little bit right, there's more static, left, there's more static. And so when you uh, practice mindfulness techniques, what you're really doing is you're just turning that radio signal in so you get a clear message. And so you can tap into your intuition so you can get insights on ideas in your family or your career.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, why did you call your book Holy Shit, We're Alive? What was the premise of that?
Yeah. So I had a moment. So it was my second night of ever doing ayahuasca. And it was so profound. I always tell people like I literally got through the veil. Like I got through the matrix. If I were to slice, I mean, this sounds crazy if people, for most people, I get it. I totally understand it sounds crazy. If I were like take a knife and cut through reality and peel back the layers, and I saw like the interworkings of what's going on or what I perceived to. I'm not saying this is true, but I was exposed to this high level of reality. And it was almost like I had a full ego death and I was almost
Hmm.
reborn back into my body. And I was kind of in there and I got thrown back into my body. And it was like I was in my body for the first time. And I remember I'm laying down in this ayahuasca room. I remember looking at my hands. And I'm like, wait, if I just think I can create a fist, I just think and it does that. I'm
Hmm.
like, holy shit, like this is crazy. And I remember leaning up and looking at other people. I'm like, we're alive. Like, guys, holy shit, we're alive. And it was like this really big celebration of like, we're human. We're on earth right now. Like it's such an incredible, great gift. And obviously I was in the medicine space, ayahuasca space. And so I had this moment of like, holy shit, guys, we're alive. And it was like this, I remember thinking like, I can't wait till this is over and I can go call all my friends and hang out and talk to my mom. And like, it literally was felt like I was reborn again. So the title of the book came from that ayahuasca ceremony.
That's so awesome. I love
Yeah,
that story. That's so great. It's
yeah,
I think it's definitely a book that you're intrigued, like,
yeah.
why should I pick
Okay.
this up?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
for somebody that is not yet ready to explore the plant medicine, to uncover certain things that you uncovered. It obviously changed the trajectory of your life. How can we start to begin to do the work? Obviously the Daily Shifts app is one way. I know that, but is there any other recommendation of, like, if you were to pull out 3 things that somebody could start doing tomorrow, that's a must to start shifting their life and uncovering possibly those stories, the shame, whatever it might be that's holding them back from living their highest self?
Yeah. On that note, I don't think plant medicine is for everyone, right? If you do not feel called to it, don't force your way into that space, I would say. But I think it's important for everyone to have a therapist, right? I always say the time you need a therapist, it's too late,
Mm.
right? And as corny or whatever, if I used to think that therapy was for weak people, right? I always have a therapist, and I usually have more than one to get multiple ideas from. And so I think it's really important to have a therapist just to bounce ideas off in a safe space. Yoga is something for me. It's a place to start. It's the mind body movement connection, right? I remember the first time I ever did yoga, it was a point in my life where I was really stressed out, all about performance, all about sales. And I didn't know what yoga was really. And I remember going to class and we got to Shavasana, which is the end where you kind of just lay down. And I remember getting to that Shavasana and being like, what is this? Like, this is so nice. My brain is quiet, right? So incorporating a mindful movement practice, I think, is a good place to start. So therapy, mindfulness movement practice. And I want to touch on this. I wouldn't say it's a good place to start, but one thing that I did, it's a small habit. It's not necessarily like in a healing space, but it dramatically affected my mental health, was I stopped charging my cell phone in my bedroom.
Mm.
So I sleep with my phone charged in my kitchen. And what it did, it actually had insane results, because what do we do when we get in bed? We get in bed and what do we do? This screen right here and we scroll, and all of a sudden it's been 30 minutes. And you don't realize what all that blue light, right, is affecting, right, your melatonin release, so you don't fall asleep later. And then if you wake up in the middle of the night, what do? You roll over, you grab your phone, you hit the light, and that tells your brain to start waking up. And so I stopped charging my phone in my room. And what happened, it took a while, but after a couple of weeks, I then trained my body that when I get in bed, it's time for sleep. And I don't have anything else to do. I don't have a TV in there. I don't have any phone. I bought an alarm clock, right? People are like, well, my phone's my alarm clock. I'm like, you can buy one on Amazon for $10. So I bought an alarm clock, and I've trained my body that the moment I get into bed, I fall asleep. I fall asleep so fast now, within like a minute to 2 minutes. And I'm now sleeping deeper, longer, and I wake up the next morning feeling well rested. And when we feel well rested, we're more open to inspiration. It affects our personal relationships. It affects our friendship. We're more open to connect, go deeper, and be more creative. And it dramatically has changed my entire life. And so I know that may not be quite the answer I'm looking for,
amazing.
But charging your cell phone outside of your bedroom and buying an alarm clock will dramatically improve the quality of your life.
So let me reveal something I do that is so bad. It's something I know, what you just shared. I'm going to tell you what I do. It's honestly so bad. And I've been telling myself I need to do exactly what you just said, because I use it for my alarm. And my body naturally wakes up at 6:30, but I want to wake up at 5:30. So I set my alarm at like 5:20, let's say. I definitely am a snoozer. I hate the fact that I snooze, and it's one of those habits I definitely want to break. How could I break it? Of course, don't have a phone. But what I do is so bad lately. I use my cell phone to actually wake me up by the blue light. So I actually purposely look at my phone, like when I know I need to wake up, so I could like truly wake up because I'm still feeling tired. I'll use my phone, the light, to actually wake me up. It's so bad. It's like,
I'm about to change your life. You ready?
I know how.
They have alarm clocks that are called sunrise alarm.
I know. And I actually have a Juve red light that actually has where you could wake up to the red light. Yeah, I know. I haven't used it yet. But you know what? After this conversation, I'm literally, I promise, because it's one of those things that I know is so bad. And I think so many people listening right now probably do the same thing. have their phone right next to their bed and they look at it before they go to sleep and when they wake up. And we know how the blue light affects us. Obviously, I'm using it to wake me up. So
Yeah.
imagine if you're using it right before you go to bed.
Yeah.
So that is proof. Like I literally use it to wake me up. So yeah, I think it's
Sunrise alarm clock's game changer. And on that note too, like I look back, I know I mentioned this briefly, but the happiest I've been in the last little while was when I put my phone. I usually go to bed around 10:30. I'll put my phone in the kitchen on airplane mode. I'll leave it charging. I'll go to sleep. I'll have a sunrise alarm clock. My alarm goes off at like 5:15, 5:20. I wake up, put my shoes on. Before I look at my phone, I go on like a 30, 40-minute walk in nature.
yeah.
Then I come home and look at my phone. And it was just like, it changes.
Yeah.
It puts me in charge of the day rather than the day running me.
It's such good advice. And I love that you mentioned that. I think it wasn't expected. And I think it is honestly probably the most valuable advice you could share for
Yeah.
many people listening. Because our phone, I mean, trust me, like kids, adults, we are literally addicted to our phones,
Ridiculous.
and it's robbing us of so much time that we could invest in ourselves by, like you said, just simply walking outside. And we know how natural sunlight is so good for us. So that's great. I love it. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the self love, self worth.
Yeah.
So I know that's part of my journey. Obviously, you speak about it as well. What really helped with you to deepen your self love and self worth? Was it just by doing these daily shifts that helped, or what was the?
That definitely helped.
Mhm.
But I think the biggest factor was diagnosing what I didn't love about myself.
Mm.
Right. And so I always start by asking, in my one-on-one work, right? This kind of the process we go through, but it's, what part of yourself are you really embarrassed about? What would you be like mortified if the world found out, right? Like, what are you trying to hide from the world, right? Is it because you feel like you're a fraud? You feel like you have imposter syndrome? You're the fat kid? You're too skinny? You're too smart? You're too dumb? Like, you have substance abuse issues? You have a gambling addiction? Whatever it may be, it doesn't matter. But that's where you start. So you want to learn to love yourself. Is you have to start where you don't love yourself, and learning to validate and love that version of you. Right. And so for me, there was a 6-year-old version of me that was the fat kid. And I remember exactly the moment where I took on that label that I was a fat kid. I was at recess in elementary school and some kid called me fat. And I was like, oh my gosh, like something's wrong. Something must be wrong with me then. Right. And then you create these stories. And so it's going back and learning to love that version of you. And you have multiple versions of yourself where you've had traumatic experiences where you then took on a story about why you didn't deserve love. And it's going through and learning to love that version of yourself. And the way I would do that is I would write, and this sounds kind of corny, but I would write letters to that version of me. So it's, dear 6-year-old Doug, I know this experience of recess was really traumatic and you felt really confused and really sad, but I want you to know that you're loved just the way you are. There's nothing wrong with you. You're perfect. And I do this for different versions of my life where I felt unlovable.
I love that. Great exercise to do. And like
Yeah.
you said, it might seem uncomfortable to do it at first, but it might be actually exactly what you need to do. It's like loving that inner child in you
Yeah.
and healing and giving your inner child a hug, right?
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
thing that's so important about self-love is that I hope people understand that if you truly, truly love yourself, it's an actual superpower, because most of us go around in the world thinking we're not enough. So then we seek desperately the validation of others. I need my partner to tell me I'm great. I need my boss to tell me I'm great. I need my mom and dad to tell me I'm great. I need my friends to tell me I'm great. I have to have this perfect Instagram and look how amazing my life is so people tell me I'm great. And what happens when you truly, truly love yourself, and it takes a lot of work, it can take years, but once you really learn to love yourself, you no longer need the validation. It's not, don't get me wrong, external validation feels great, I'm not saying don't, but you don't need it anymore. You don't need it to
Yeah.
fill a wound. You filled it yourself. And when you fill your self-love wound yourself, it gives you permission to show up in the world as your truest, most authentic self. And you can do what you want to do because you want to create, you want to connect, you want to have fun, you want to explore. And it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks of us, because so many of us are holding back in our lives based upon what others might think of us if we were to go for it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I preach. I mean, I totally agree. I completely think that, I mean, I usually say my authenticity and my vulnerability is my superpower, but I also agree self-love. I think self-love is the foundation of everything, because that love for ourself will always mirror back to us.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think so many seek validation, especially in this social media world. It's what it is. It's all about the likes, the
Yeah.
views and everything. And really it's all about accepting yourself.
Mm.
And I think that, and I know another thing you talk about is uh to not, actually I've heard you, I think you quoted this in your book, and I love this because control the incontrollable. I think it was stated by, what's his name,
So it was Darren Hardy from the Compound Effect book, and that's
yeah,
control what's
that's,
controllable.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that's so important, because I feel that anytime you try to control any outside circumstance, then you lose control of everything, even yourself, most importantly. So I think it's so important that you really need to get to a point where you're just controlling what you can control, which is truly just yourself and
Yeah.
your actions, your, what you say yes to, what you say no to, and everything, and being in alignment with that
Yeah.
is
And that
so important.
realization, that really hit me in 2018. I was the most depressed I'd ever been. I'd kind of started my spiritual journey. It was really exciting. And then once you really start on your spiritual journey, you're like, oh shit, I've got work to do. There's a lot of wounded parts of myself. And around that same time, this girl who I was absolutely head over heels in love with, thought I had found the one, like I figured out the secret to life, and I was madly in love with this girl. She dumped me. So I'm like going through a spiritual awakening. I just get dumped, and now I'm dealing with all of my trauma that I've never looked at. And at one point in my life, I had suicidal thoughts. I'm like, this is so intense, so depressing. I'm like, I'm just going to end this. And then that thought, and then I realized what happened. I was like, oh my gosh, I've actually outsourced my happiness onto people, places, and things. I outsourced it onto my ex. I outsourced it onto how much money I made. And so I didn't, I gave up control. And I'm like, I need to learn to love myself, because if I love myself, I can be in control of my happiness. And so I was like, okay, what things do I have control over? I have control over of what I eat. I have control over if I stay hydrated, if I get enough sleep, if I move my body, if I journal, if I stay out in nature. And those are all things that make me feel good and fill the void. And so I started there. And so the way I actually dug myself out of a deep, deep depression and moments of suicidal thoughts was, what can I control? And it was a lot of those factors. And I put all of my effort into those factors.
I love that. So that's a great exercise people could do. And I know you actually have this in your book. You started writing out what you could control, but we all individually could write that ourselves. And then you'll discover new things about it. And you'll also realize what you're trying to control that you actually have no control over.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a lot of people realized over the pandemic is so much is out of our control, and so we have to take control of our own life and our own space and what's under our roof. So talking also the end of your book. So just in closure. So your book, obviously, like I said, I'll plug it in the show notes. Holy
Yeah.
shit, we're alive. It's
Yeah.
really, really, really an awesome book. I really enjoyed going through it right now. Like I said, I can't wait to have the hard copy so I could highlight the crap out of it. But the end of your book, I really like that you included 10 tips to live life on earth.
Yeah.
So could you share what these are? Just briefly run through them.
Yeah. So these are kind of just my little takeaways, my final insights of really just simple tasks as very, very simple remembrances. And, I have ones of, be human. Like number one, just be human, like sing, dance, jump in the ocean. Like it's important to that. Other ones are connect with others, stay open and connect. Like how often in times are we in such a rush in our day and we are leaving our building, whatever, and we get in the elevator and we're just have these neurotic thoughts the whole time. But like other people are craving connection, right?
Yeah.
We're all craving connection, and just the power of looking at people in the eyes and saying hello is really powerful. And I go down the list of and the importance of sitting still, right? We move so quickly, and if we can sit still and tap into the intuition, it can guide us. And I'll skip over some of them, but the last one that I think is really important is is I say, look up, right? What's really insane right now is we are on a rock orbiting a star, hurling through infinity, right? In this grand cosmic universe with multiple universes, and no one knows why, right? We really don't know what's going on, right? We don't know the inner workings. And the importance of looking up into the night sky and embracing the stars at night and just having this holy shit, I'm alive moment, right? I think it's really important because we get so caught up in the day to day that we never really question what our purpose is and why we're on this planet. And we like to distract ourselves from that conversation because it can be intimidating, it can be really, really scary, you know, when you really take it the size of the universe. And I think it's an important question we need to ask ourselves, you know, as we are on this teeny, 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 tiny planet in the middle of nowhere. And we have this opportunity to be dropped down on this beautiful and have this beautiful experience. And I just want to make sure and encourage other people to ask that question so you can really learn to embrace the human experience and embrace your life and participate in it and be grateful that you get to be human. And once you kind of understand that, how can you maximize the richness and the deepness of your life?
So beautifully said. And I think I love that you share that. I love that, and participate in
Yeah,
your life. That's
yeah.
so beautiful. So I
Uh,
always like to close off with asking my guest, if you were to leave one piece of advice that you feel everybody needs to hear right now, what would it be?
Trust your intuition, right? We know we start to get warning signs when things are off. A big mentor of mine, I've never met her obviously, but is Oprah Winfrey, and she calls them the whispers, right? We get whispers when things are off, whether it's in regards to our health, to our relationships, to our career. And when we don't listen to the whispers, they turn into brick in the face moments where things do fall apart. And it's because we knew intuitively, we knew the right decision, but we didn't listen to it. So the advice I would give anyone is, you know, no one knows what's best for you but you. Your coworkers, your partner, your kids, your family, your friends, they don't know what's best for you, but you do. And so learning to build a relationship with your intuition and then trusting that will take you places you could have never imagined.
Beautifully said. I love it.
Thank you.
I love it. This has been so great, Doug. I deeply appreciate this time and all you shared today, and also your vulnerability. And I know that everybody get his book. It's available. Like I said, it'll be in the show notes. This has been an honor. And also check out the Daily Shifts app.
Yeah.
I think you have a 7-day trial as well, and it's a low price membership. Am I correct?
Super affordable. It's you can download it in the Apple App Store. Sorry, Android users, where I promise you we're coming soon. So just iPhone for now. But for those, like I said, download the book, and that there's lots of juicy insights for you in there as well.
Thank you so much. This has been such an honor. Where could people best find you?
Instagram's the best at Doug_Cartwright. And I do my very, very, very best to respond to every DM. So if you've got a question or looking for some direction, hit me up. I would love to chat with you.
Perfect. Thank you, Doug. It's been an honor.
Thank you.